Hello everyone, and thanks so much for being with us. And today on Firstpost America, we'll take you to the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. China announces it will suspend special port fees on U.S. vessels for 1 year in tandem with Washington's pause on levies targeting Chinese ships as the fragile trade truce between the two countries takes shape. Iran dismisses U.S. accusations that it tried to assassinate the Israeli ambassador in Mexico, calling the claim absurd and part of an effort to destroy Tehran's friendly relations with other nations. Hello everyone, and thanks so much for being with us. And today on Firstpost America, we'll take you to the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. China announces it will suspend special port fees on U.S. vessels for 1 year in tandem with Washington's pause on levies targeting Chinese ships as the fragile trade truce between the two countries takes shape. Iran dismisses U.S. accusations that it tried to assassinate the Israeli ambassador in Mexico, calling the claim absurd and part of an effort to destroy Tehran's friendly relations with other nations. Thailand says it's suspending the implementation of a peace agreement with Cambodia, which was overseen by President Donald Trump after a landmine blast injured 2 Thai soldiers near the disputed border. The Dutch Consumer Association announces that it's filing a class action lawsuit against BMW, accusing the luxury car maker of falsifying emissions data in around 100,000 vehicles sold in the Netherlands. Global equities rally on hopes that the 40-day government shutdown in the United States could be nearing an end, easing worries over tech valuations and an AI bubble. We begin with a story that would have seemed unthinkable not too long ago. Ahmed Al-Sharaa, a once notorious jihadist commander and now the president of Syria, walking through the doors of the White House to meet President Donald Trump. Al-Sharaa's visit to Washington marks a turning point not just for Syria but for global diplomacy itself. The man who was once hunted by the United States is now being welcomed as an official guest of honor. His journey to this point is nothing short of extraordinary. In fact, only a year ago he emerged as Syria's new leader following the dramatic fall of the Assad regime. But before his rise to power, he was known to the world by a very different name, Abu Mohammed al-Jolani, the feared commander of the Nusra Front, al-Qaeda's branch in Syria. During the brutal civil war, he was among the most wanted men on the planet, with the United States offering a $10 million bounty for information leading to his capture. Fast forward to 2025, and this same man is now being received in Washington, not as a prisoner, but as a partner. His arrival sparked both fascination and outrage, especially after a viral video showed him casually playing basketball with American military officials shortly after landing in the United States. Critics called it surreal, a symbol of how drastically political tides have shifted. The U.S. once detained him in Iraq and branded him a terrorist, but today his name has been formally removed from the American sanctions list, all ahead of a face-to-face meeting with the president. Trump even praised him recently for doing a very good job.
And I think he's doing a very good job. It's a tough neighborhood, and he's a tough guy, but I got along with him very well, and a lot of progress has been made with Syria. That's a tough one, but a lot of progress has been made. You know, we took the sanctions off at the request of Turkey, at the request of actually Israel.
So why is Washington embracing a man with such a notorious past? For President Trump, Monday's meeting serves 3 key goals. First, it's a major foreign policy victory ahead of the elections, an opportunity to claim he restored Syria's place in the international fold. Second, it's a geopolitical move to counter Moscow's growing influence in Damascus, especially after Al-Sharaa's recent visit with Vladimir Putin, where he pledged to redefine Syria-Russia ties. And third, it feeds Washington's larger Middle East vision, a potential framework for regional peace after the fragile truce between Israel and Hamas. By bringing Syria to the table months after the two leaders met in Saudi Arabia earlier this year, the U.S. aims to weaken Iranian and Russian leverage in the region while strengthening its own network of allies. Al-Sharaa, despite his controversial past, is being seen as a potential bridge. In today's meeting at the White House, the first official visit by a Syrian head of state since the country's independence in 1946, carries immense symbolism. The agenda is wide-ranging, lifting crippling U.S. sanctions, rebuilding Syria's shattered economy, coordinating against ISIS, and perhaps even exploring the first steps toward normalization with Israel. And as the cameras flash in the White House and handshakes are exchanged, one question lingers. Is this the dawn of a new era for Syria and the region, or just another uneasy chapter in the ever-shifting game of Middle Eastern power politics? Only time and the outcome of this meeting will actually tell. President Donald Trump's sweeping immigration crackdown has intensified across U.S. cities, with federal agents expanding operations and clashing with communities. But in Chicago, the campaign took a disturbing turn when a family, including a one-year-old girl, was pepper sprayed by Border Patrol agents during a weekend operation. The incident unfolded last Saturday morning in a parking lot in Cicero, just outside the city's Little Village neighborhood. Rafael Verza said he and his wife were driving with their daughter, Ariana, to buy groceries when they noticed a helicopter overhead and people blowing whistles, a common warning that immigration agents were nearby. Now attempting to leave the area, Verza said a dark-colored pickup truck drove past and someone inside sprayed a chemical irritant directly into the car. And his one-year-old daughter sitting in the back seat inhaled the gas.
He started spraying from the front of the car towards the back. Basically, I got sprayed all over my face. I'm asthmatic, so the moment it hit me, I couldn't breathe. My daughter was also trying to open her eyes. She was also struggling to breathe.
The video that's now gone viral shows Verza's wife crying out as she films the aftermath, her baby crying as bystanders help the family flush their eyes with bottled water.
All four were struggling to breathe, their faces burning from pepper spray. They weren't protesting. They were just shopping.
Now, the Department of Homeland Security initially denied that the agents used the pepper spray. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin posted on X saying, quote, "No, there was no crowd control or pepper spray deployed in a Sam's Club parking lot," end quote. The department later said agents had entered the area after facing gunfire and attacks in Little Village, claiming that individuals stalked and followed the convoy and that the vehicle rammed into a Border Patrol truck. DHS even released photos showing vehicle damage but offered no explanation for why Verza and his family and others nearby were sprayed.
I wasn't a protester. I didn't have anything against them. I was just trying to exit.
Saturday's operation, part of Operation Midway Blitz, came just days after a federal judge limited how agents can use force. U.S. District Judge issued a preliminary injunction restricting riot-control weapons against non-threatening individuals unless officers issue 2 warnings. DHS, however, has appealed the ruling, and Verza's family is now considering legal action to cover the specialist care his daughter will need after the exposure to the spray. But as DHS continues to defend its operation, questions remain. How did a grocery run end with a baby gasping for air in Trump's America, and what comes next in this deepening crackdown? President Donald Trump is once again defending his tariff policy, which he says has made the United States the richest and most respected country in the world. In a Truth Social post on Sunday, the president claimed that every American, except those in the high-income bracket, will soon receive at least $2,000 from tariff revenues collected by his administration. The president also dismissed critics of his trade policy, calling them fools, and said tariffs have triggered record investment and new manufacturing across the nation. He also attempted to justify his actions that upset the global trade balance, questioning the scope of presidential powers.
People that are against tariffs are fools. We are now the richest, most respected country in the world, with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. So let's get this straight. The President of the United States is allowed to stop all trade with a foreign country and license a foreign country, but is not allowed to put a simple tariff on a foreign country, even for the purpose of national security.
These comments come just days after the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments that could determine the legality of President Trump's sweeping tariffs. In his post on Truth Social, President Trump wrote that record investment is now flowing into the U.S., with plants and factories going up all over the place. He also said that the proposed $2,000 dividend, which would exclude the wealthiest Americans, would soon be distributed to every eligible person. However, the president didn't clarify what income threshold would define high income, nor did he provide any details on how or when such payments would in fact be made. For such a plan to take effect, congressional approval would likely be required. In fact, earlier this year, Republican Senator Josh Hawley introduced a similar proposal for $600 in tariff rebates for most Americans and their dependent children, but it didn't advance in the Senate. President Trump's new figure is far higher and would represent a significant financial commitment from tariff revenues that are currently estimated to bring in between $300 and $400 billion annually. Now, what makes this announcement particularly notable is its timing. The president's promise of a tariff dividend came just days after his own administration argued before the Supreme Court that tariffs are not intended to raise revenue. In that case, government lawyers maintained that tariffs serve to rebalance trade rather than generate funds. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, speaking on ABC's This Week, also reinforced that message, saying tariffs are meant to restore American competitiveness, with any revenue eventually replaced by higher domestic tax income as manufacturing jobs return to the United States. However, he noted that certain tax provisions already enacted under Donald Trump's broader tax and spending bill could serve as potential sources for such a payment.
The $2,000 dividend could come in lots of forms, in lots of ways. You know, it could be just the tax decreases that we are seeing on the president's agenda. So those are substantial deductions that are being financed in the tax bill.
Now, according to the Congressional Budget Office, tariffs could generate as much as $3.3 trillion in revenue over the next decade if current policies continue. This is also the first time the president has clearly specified an amount of what he calls a tariff dividend after months of vague promises ranging between $1,000 and $2,000. But with the Supreme Court now questioning whether his use of tariffs is even constitutional, it remains to be seen whether his latest pledge is a sign of policy innovation or a political gamble designed to rally public support. A Hollywood star and a Washington heavyweight, not exactly the duo anyone expected. Yet overnight, here we are. Vance Sweeney 2028 lit up the internet like a campaign that never existed. What began as a tongue-in-cheek comment turned into a viral movement with memes, mock posters, and hashtags flooding social media. Some called it satire, others saw symbolism, the merging of pop culture and politics in real time. Actually, it seems like we already have that. From online fandoms to political talk shows, everyone had an opinion, of course. But where did this improbable idea really come from, and why did it take off so fast? Well, here's the story answering all of those questions.
It began as a whisper online, like a wild idea, a name pairing no one saw coming: J.D. Vance and Sydney Sweeney, the Vice President of the United States and a Hollywood star. Politics and pop culture, suddenly in the same sentence. And just like that, Vance Sweeney 2028 took over the internet. Soon came memes, photoshopped campaign posters, and endless jokes. And a fantasy ticket became a viral talking point. The spark? Conservative commentator Michael Knowles. During his appearance on The Megyn Kelly Show, the Daily Wire host praised Sweeney, calling her the new spokesman for the American right. Then came the punchline, and I quote, "I'm formally endorsing a Vance-Sweeney 2028 ticket." That single sentence changed everything. Within hours, MAGA commentators jumped in. Benny Johnson declared on Fox News Sydney Sweeney proved she has more than most politicians in DC. But why the sudden praise? It all came from Sweeney's GQ interview. She had been asked about the controversy around her American Eagle Great Genes ad, which campaign critics claimed hinted at genetic superiority. But Sweeney didn't back down. She said, and I quote, "When I have an issue I want to speak about, people will hear. No apology, no long defense, just calm confidence." Conservatives called it strength, while liberals called it avoidance. Either way, she was trending. Fox News host Jesse Waters even joked that Senator Marco Rubio might not like the idea of a Vance-Sweeney ticket, a dig at speculation that Rubio could be eyeing the VP spot next term. Others threw in a new name, Erica Kirk. She recently went viral after praising Vance at a Turning Point USA event. The internet teased that she might not enjoy seeing Sweeney as his imagined running mate. But here's the twist, none of it is real. There is no Vance-Sweeney 2028 campaign, zero confirmation. Sweeney may be a registered Republican, but she's staying in Hollywood. After Christie hit theaters on November 7, she has The Housemaid coming in December, followed by Man from Rio and Scandalous. As for Vance, he's been cautious. Supporters greet him with chants of 48, hinting at their hope of seeing him as the 48th president. But he's not taking the bait. At a recent Turning Point USA event, he told the crowd not to get ahead of themselves. Still, this viral ticket says something bigger. It shows how quickly a joke can become a headline, how a meme can mix Hollywood with the White House, and how in today's America, political fantasy can feel almost real. For now, Vance-Sweeney 2028 lives only online, a story made of memes, ambition, and imagination. But who knows? In politics, stranger things have happened.
It's that time of year, the great Indian wedding season. Streets glow with fairy lights, brass bands rehearsing bylanes, and somewhere a groom and a bride feel the jitters. But this year, there's a new twist to the celebration. Foreign tourists are turning up, not as gate crashers, but as paying guests. Yes, wedding tourism is the newest trend, making headlines where travelers are signing up to experience India's most extravagant social ritual. One dance move at a time. Our final story has the latest.
By all accounts, the Indian wedding season is less a season and more a national festival. The marigolds bloom brighter, the playlists grow louder, and somewhere a young group is rehearsing their dances for a ceremony like it's the Olympics. But this year, something curious is happening at the buffet line. The people clinking glasses with the bride's cousins aren't always from the same postal code. In fact, some of them might be from Berlin, Boston, or Brisbane. Welcome to the newest entry on India's cultural calendar, the wedding tourism boom. Travellers are now flying into India not just to see the Taj Mahal or sip tea in Jaipur, but to attend weddings. Not crash them, mind you, but join them legally as paying guests. It's a real, organised experience facilitated by startups, tourist guides and wedding planners. Tourists can browse listings of upcoming nuptials and book a seat at the most joyous show in town. But nothing comes for free. To attend the wedding, tourists have to pay a fee of reportedly over $100. This fee will give the visitors access to the full, big, fat Indian wedding itinerary, which includes a henna ceremony, musical night, feasts, fireworks, and enough selfie opportunities to fill an entire holiday album. The couple, in turn, earns a modest share from ticket sales, which helps chip away at the Everest-sized wedding budget. So it is a win-win situation for everyone involved. The guests get a cultural spectacle, and the hosts get a little financial relief, and possibly some exotic new Instagram followers. To the uninitiated, an Indian wedding is not a single day's affair. It's an epic saga. Think of it as a multi-episode Netflix series with no skip intro buttons. From turmeric ceremonies and henna artistry to choreographed dances and 7 sacred vows, every ritual carries centuries of tradition and symbolism. For a first-time visitor, it's like walking into a living museum of music, fashion, and emotion. For locals, however, it's deeply personal, an intersection of faith, family, and festivity. And now, for a growing number of tourists, it's the most immersive cultural experience money can buy. It's tourism with a twist. Before you picture a bewildered backpacker wandering into a mandap uninvited, let's clarify. This isn't gate crashing. These are curated, consensual experiences designed to preserve the sanctity of the ceremony while giving outsiders a front-row seat to India's most spectacular social ritual. Guests don't just watch from the sidelines. They dance, dine, and occasionally even join the wedding procession. According to travel analysts, wedding tourism taps into the growing demand for experience-based travel, a place where travelers crave authenticity over itineraries. As per reports, this year the wedding season is expected to generate over $77 billion. This business will come from an estimated 5 million weddings. Whether you see it as savvy cultural diplomacy or the ultimate immersive vacation, one thing's clear: India's weddings have officially gone global. Somewhere between the doll beats and the dessert counter, worlds are colliding, and cultures are dancing in sync. So if you hear a tourist exclaim, "Best wedding ever," while expertly doing a dance move, don't be surprised. The big fat Indian wedding just got itself a brand new guest list.
That's all we have time for today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.